Of all the mysteries in the rich Mesoamerican cultures of the Western world, Aztec, Toltecs, Maya, none exceeds that of the Olmecs. So mysterious were they that to date, no one has been able to explain without a doubt how exactly this Stone Age culture achieved feats that our modern technological man would find troublesome or nearly impossible. Rather than beat around the bush about how the Olmecs were able to achieve what they did, I figured I'd show you what they did and theorize with you so you could be the judge. In this episode, I'll be covering everything from the Olmec colossal heads and massive altars to bizarre relics and pieces of art that simply baffle experts. And if you think this episode is just going to be a rehash of what everyone else on YouTube has said, this is metaphysical. So of course, I'm going to bring you an entirely new perspective with a little healthy speculation about things which will come at the end. Prepare to view Mesoamerica in a completely new light. A quick reminder to like and subscribe to make sure you don't miss out on any updates or content drops. All your support lets us keep making this content, so thanks a lot for watching. The first thing I have to talk about is the Olmec colossal heads. 17 of these bad boys were found, but it's believed that many more are still buried, waiting to be discovered. They each have their own unique look with clearly different features and even helmets. This has led experts to believe that these sculptures must be depictions of Olmec kings. But who were the Olmecs? For a little background, the Olmecs mostly lived in the tropical lowlands in the Gulf of Mexico and the Mexican states of Veracruz and Tabasco. But their influence goes way beyond this. It's widely recognized that if it weren't for the Olmecs, the Maya and Toltec civilizations simply would not have been possible. Amazingly, the Olmecs' colossal heads were anywhere from 6 tons, their lightest, to 40 tons, their heaviest. The smallest head is called Monument 2 and was found in San Lorenzo. The largest head is called La Cobata. Hunter-gatherer men of this time had no business moving a stone of this weight, never mind carving into it or chiseling it in the first place. We'll talk about transporting the heads in a moment. Now, the Olmecs were said to have been active between 1600 and 400 BC. This is already amazing. The Olmecs were known for incredible artistry, carving, giant megalithic structures, trade, and also their mysterious origins. They even had unexpectedly sophisticated advancements like developing rubber from the rubber tree and making 2 types of calendars, one solar and the other astrological. The Olmecs were even nicknamed the Rubber People. So my thought is, where there's development of this magnitude, there must also be technology. But according to accepted notions about this time period, the Olmecs literally did not have tools to carve such amazing, massive sculptures. For one, basalt is extremely heavy and very hard. Modern man has to use tungsten carbide tool tips to carve into basalt. Even iron or steel tools aren't really ideal for that kind of rock, and yet they did it. So how did they do it? Well, no one really knows. There are a few important things that you need to know that I just don't hear people talking about enough or recognizing about these heads. As I mentioned, the heads were chiseled from massive basalt blocks, the greatest being 40 to 50 tons. The quarry for these blocks was 50 miles away in the north at a site in the Tuxtlas Mountains of Veracruz. All right, to put this into perspective, 50 miles would take about 17 hours to walk as a normal person at a normal speed without 40-ton blocks weighing them down. Now, challenging terrain, mountains, rushing rivers, swamplands, and more incredibly challenging obstacles lie between the quarry and the sites these colossal heads were found. So think deeply for a moment about the accumulated knowledge needed to move such objects, then think about the amount of manpower it would need. The closest ideas we have to conceptualizing how to move such stones have been the attempts to explain a similar problem in Egypt. There, experts have theorized that huge rose granite blocks were moved from the Aswan quarry to the Giza Plateau by riverboat. It's important to note, though, that these theories have failed every single time they've been tested. Even virtual tests with software developed by nautical engineers have failed the riverboat test with only 5 tons. The smallest Olmec head, as I said, was 6 tons. And this was its weight after it was carved. The stones are thought to have been moved from the quarry before they were chiseled, though. So they were even heavier when they were being transported? I mean, you'd never do this unless you knew exactly what you were doing. A question no one is asking is, where did the Olmecs get this idea? Think about it. Here they are just chilling in Mesoamerica, and one person says to another, let's carve something colossal. Fat chance. This undertaking would have been enormous for a civilization as old as the Olmecs. So what happened? Well, I just so happened to find a lead that might help us understand this better: the giant stone head of Guatemala, also known as Padilla's head. In 1987, Dr. Oscar Rafael Padilla Lara received a photograph and a description of a head somewhere in the jungles of Guatemala. The description stated that the photo was taken in the 1950s, which was clear from the car in the photo. Dr. Padilla tracked down the owners of the property where the photograph was taken, the Bianer family. He found the photo was taken near a small village called La Democracia in the south of Guatemala. Unfortunately, by the time Padilla arrived, the monument had been destroyed by warring anti-government rebels who'd used the head for target practice 10 years before. Now, after finding the site, Padilla measured the monument, and it was about 6 meters in height. And it was resting on a neck. Of course, sensational assumptions were made about the head and the photograph being a hoax, but no one has been able to completely debunk the photograph. There are claims there was a plaque on it saying it was created in more modern times, but without any proof, there are really no claims that debunk this. Whether it's a hoax or not, isn't it interesting that the Mesoamerican culture has these real enormous heads from the ancient past? What else has been destroyed by years and war? And what else will we find if we dig? Now, assuming the photograph is real, it's 18 feet tall. The largest and heaviest stone from the Olmec heads, meanwhile, was about 10 or 11 feet tall. So this one in Guatemala was 8 feet taller than that. The craziest part is that the head lies along a known Olmec trade route. Something we just don't know, though, is what was the Earth like at the time when the Olmecs walked it? None of us really know. Did the Olmecs find giant heads and attempt to emulate what they were seeing? Why would they come to the desire to sculpt giant heads if they weren't already amongst them in their travels? I mean, think about it. From here, this is only going to get more interesting the more artifacts I show you, so let's move on to the Olmecs altars so we can add to the mystery. As incredibly impressive as the Olmec colossal heads are, there are yet other colossal sculptures that they created. 7 massive altars were found in La Venta. Well, they call them altars, but honestly, experts have no idea what they were used for originally. For the purposes of this episode, I'm just going to refer to them as altars. Some speculate that they may have been thrones that the king sat on during important rituals or even sacrifices. If that's true, the Olmecs must have been giants because the altars are 6 feet tall and 12 feet wide. The carving and the moving of these stones are equally as perplexing as the colossal heads. What stands out about these altars, however, are the sculpted figures emerging from some type of entryway. This cave motif was extremely important to them and seen throughout their culture. Get this, the Olmecs believed their people originally emerged from caves. Some think this is some kind of evidence that the Olmecs were into psychedelics or used caves to communicate with or make contact with other dimensions or the underworld. But what if they weren't used for that? What I find so fascinating about this is the possibility that instead of the cave being an analogy for psychedelics, what if instead it's visual proof of a catastrophe? Well, stay with me for a moment while I explain this. Graham Hancock and others often talk about a catastrophe that came at the end of the last civilization of humanity about 12,000 years ago. This catastrophe reached the entire planet and may have been related to a huge shift in the climate, causing a devastating ice age. This period of time is referred to as the Younger Dryas, and it's believed that this period could have ended abruptly. Multiple sites on the Earth have been uncovered where, by all accounts, it seems humans dug into the Earth and stayed for very long periods of time. Derinkuyu in Turkey is one of them. It's completely subterranean and stretches 280 feet underground. Strangely, I recently did an episode on the Lizard People's Catacomb City underneath LA, which if you haven't seen that yet, you totally should, because it corroborates everything we're talking about and gets into evidence of amazing ancient civilizations. What if the Olmecs were originally part of this catastrophe and did the same to survive, staying underground for an unknown period of time? When the time was ripe, they came out onto the surface and the world was new for them. That's where we'd get these visual depictions of the story in the altars. This emergence would have been extremely important for them, would it not? I've basically covered 2 of the most important examples of Olmec art we have that already throw so many things into question. Were the Olmecs the first to emerge after the Younger Dryas period? Were they influenced by the previous civilizations left over from a more distant age? These questions are part of a much larger mystery that I'm about to bring home to you guys right now. I'm going to say something rather controversial that plainly just needs to be said. We, as a culture, need to stop thinking we know anything conclusively. It's okay to theorize, but when theories can't be questioned, it's kind of mad, don't you think? Why do the Olmec heads not really resemble the figures on their altars? They're both considered Olmec works because, hey, they're both huge colossal structures, but the Olmec altars seem to resemble Maya art much more than the colossal heads. Don't forget that the colossal heads were buried when they were found, so how could we really know how old these are? Carbon dating is extremely limited, and there are other anomalies as well. The Olmec culture's jade masks are simply exquisite works of art. This type of jade is actually much harder to work than steel. We're expected to believe they crafted these when the Olmec culture was running around in loincloths and didn't have a written language. Also, they don't look Polynesian at all, but seem to resemble Chinese people much more precisely. In fact, there are theories that the artistry of these masks were not from Mesoamerica at all, but were rather of Chinese origin. There's a specific period and type of Chinese art from the Hongshan culture where the masks look almost identical. But amazingly, the prehistoric Hongshan activity was happening around 4700 to 2900 BC. This is even older than the Olmec period. But as I said before, all those assertions about time periods are theoretical. Some have speculated that the Olmecs were even 1,000 years older than we previously thought. This evidence of Chinese influence in Mesoamerica could place the Olmecs at least 2,000 years older. But why does it all matter? Also curious is the fact that the natural currents of the Pacific Ocean would lead any capable sea culture to the shores of Mesoamerica and back around again to China. If you think this is a stretch and that ancient culture was just not advanced enough yet to circumnavigate the globe, maybe you're right. But even if you are right, then we have a bigger problem. Why were native Chinese people in Mesoamerica at any point in history? Okay, I'll leave you with this. My background is in the arts. I went to school for the arts and studied Renaissance painting and restoration for a period of time even after my studies. I have a lot of contacts who are sculptors, restore sculptures and paintings, paint themselves, and understand the old masters of art from the Renaissance. The wrestler from the Olmec culture has to be, low-key, the most confusing piece of art that's been found in what's considered to have been the Olmec culture, I have to say. Now, after looking at this long enough and checking in with some of my friends who are extremely capable, realistic sculptors, I don't think this piece can be attributed to the Olmecs. Just look at it. The features are clearly Asian, and there is no example of anatomical artistry like this that reaches this height anywhere else in the Olmec culture. It's extremely sophisticated. It could be argued that the altar figures are similar, but the essential features and anatomical sophistication is different. Not only is there no example of anatomical artistry this advanced in the Olmec culture, but there is also no example of artistry this exquisite even in Chinese civilization, and especially not of this time period. So where the heck is this wrestler from, or any of the art I just showed you from? This, my friends, is the inherent problem now with our current understanding of human history. Do our archaeologists have the technological or artistic know-how, or engineering degrees, for that matter, to speak to the mysteries we're seeing? We could be seeing and experiencing examples from several cultures spanned over countless years that are all in the same location, but most archaeologists don't have the starting point to accept any of that. So you might be asking, well, Rob, what do you think about all this? When digging up ancient sites, we send our best archaeologists. Maybe it's time to send our best artists. I've barely hit a little bit of Mesoamerica with this episode, so if you want to hear more about their calendars, their reliefs that seem to match up with other art from around the entire world and more, please leave me a comment below and I'll start putting all that together. If you like this episode and want more, please consider supporting my work by pledging on our website, themetaphysical.tv. With your help, I can make more videos, more merch, which I designed myself, by the way, and also more exclusive episodes like Ancient Sites That Warn of Cataclysms, Ancient Chamber of Secrets Reveal Hidden Vimanas, and What is the Observer Effect? You can also get a bag of delicious metaphysical coffee every month if you want your mornings to be interstellar. That's some pretty good coffee, folks. Remember to like and subscribe to help the channel grow as well. And if you want to hear longer conversational episodes right on YouTube, our Metaphysical podcast has dived into countless mysteries on ancient civilizations, strange places, and shocking creatures. And with that, I hope you thought this episode was out of this world.